Genshin Impact hit the gaming community with its last title word, and for a good reason. It combines the best and also the worst gaming has to offer. In this video I will go through all of Genshin Impact. One of the best features Genshin has is the exploration. Your moveset feels extremely good and you can see and find many places. All exploration leads to loot chests, however. You solve a puzzle, like those ghosts you have to bring back to their statue, you get a chest. You light up some elemental fountains, you also get a chest. Even the minor quests rewards you with a chest. Chests have everything you need: artifacts, weapons and primogems. Primogems and their worth will be listed in the Gacha section, but for now just notice that you get new characters and weapons with them through wishes. Chests also give you adventure ranks through experience, and in the mid-level you need those, because adventure ranks below level 40 is a monumental padding effort from the game and you can't progress the story. However, the challenges themselves are entertaining, at least some. They are time challenges where you need to go to a certain point in minutes, combat challenges who are mostly beating enemies up in time or without a time limitation. You sometimes have puzzles, and you have those Souls-like things appropriately named Seele, which you bring to their statue. The world of Teyvat is beautiful. You can move wherever you like, with distinct regions to explore. Around Mondstadt there are green fields, in Stormtear's lair there are ruins, and Leo has high mountains. Just running around makes so much fun. The constant puzzles and challenges keep up your mood with tiny rewards along the way. This is the best part of Genshin, and the one which reminded me the most of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And that should do as an intro. If you like the game, you should pick it up. In my first draft I structured this project like a science essay, and I think that's not very fun to watch, albeit better structured. But I think having an enjoyable experience comes first, so I will go through all of the story and intercept with criticism and mechanics. Genshin Impact's story plays in the fantasy world of Teyvat, as you could have guessed from the previous section. Your character and your brother or sister, whichever you not choose, are traveling between multiple worlds, which instantly reminded me of the Planeswalkers in Magic the Gathering. You encounter a goddess which beats you and your sibling, and transports you to this world.
Give my sister back!
You wake up on a shore and meet Paimon, who's one of the worst characters. She's extremely annoying and always talking in a high-pitched noise combined with an attitude problem. You save her from drowning when you were fishing. You know there's something like catch and release, and for some reason it takes you months to leave the shore and find the first city, which is only minutes away, so even in the story the grindiness is real. On your way you meet Amber, your second character, and she tells you about Mondstadt, a city of freedom, that has an order of knights with strict rules to follow. And because I'm not confident in my sarcasm without my facial expressions, this is your exclamation mark. Freedom and strict rules don't go well together. The Knights of Favonius are a peacekeeping order, and you later join them as a honorary knight. On the way you also see a dragon and a boy that looks like the statue of Barbados, the god of wind. Wonder if that has a meaning. You go sightseeing in Mondstadt, and this is already strange. When you first met Paimon, you might not think of her as a strange creature. Most fantasy games have different sentient beings that loosely resemble humans. But neither in Mondstadt nor later in Liyue there's anyone like Paimon. This weird floating ball of annoyance is one of a kind, and don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for that, but people should have more of a reaction. Imagine you would have a floating alien friend and you would go through a city. More importantly, you get a glider, but then Dwalin attacks the city and he's called Storm Terror by the citizens. You get flying powers and shoot him. This section only happens twice and it doesn't add much to the game. After you fended off Dwalin, Kaya, the cavalry captain, comes. There are no horses. I don't know what he's riding into battle, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. For now, let's talk about progression. Many games have intrinsical progression systems, often multiple. Let's list them for Genshin. Multiple characters with progression in levels, abilities and constellations, In addition to that, equipment like weapons and artifacts. Separate to those is your adventure rank and corresponding your world level. Your adventure rank is kinda your overall progression, and the world level determines how tough enemies get, as well as how good the rewards are. Everything you do in Genshin Impact is for the purpose of progression. You need more artifacts for combining them, more weapons to level them up, and so on. So that the player can't farm endlessly and have to buy Primo Gems, the developer made an energy system. Formerly 120 resin, now 160 resin, you can store up. Resin refreshes 1 point every 7 minutes. This resin can be used on domains where you can get artifacts and upgrade materials. You need those materials to overcome a progression wall every 10 levels after 40. You need different materials for both character and weapon progression, as well as talents. Different weekdays give different materials. You spend about 20 resin on those. Bosses take 40 resin and are primarily used for character upgrade materials, but you also get artifacts from them. There are also ley lines, again cost a quanta 20 resin for money and XP. And world bosses for 60 resin, with big rewards, but can only be done once a week. You also need in-game currency called Mora for everything in addition to separate materials, which I already mentioned. Genshin Impact's progression is heavily dependent on these resources. The player has to farm. The farther you are in the progression path, the more resources you need, and each character has its own path. You can swap weapons and artifacts, but the rest is for each character and can't be swapped. One of my beliefs is that you can integrate modern economic theory in game theory. One is the input-output theory from Adams. Adams studied employee happiness, and it goes like this. An employee takes his experience, his working hours and many more, and put that all into his work and the company. That's input, and gets money, sometimes status, and more in return. That's output. If the output is higher than the input, you are satisfied. If it's lower, you are displeased. This model can be applied to reward system in games. If the challenge is higher than the reward, you are frustrated and happy if your reward is higher. Sometimes the challenge can be part of the reward, as well as work can be fun too. Most gamers will also instinctively use that method to be effective. When one option to use your resin has way more rewards, you will use that method instead. I found that principle with many of the events. To give one more example, imagine you have to go through a lot of work speaking with many characters, beating many monsters, doing an escort mission because everyone loves escort missions, and in return you get a thanks. The output, or in this case the reward, is so much lower than the challenge that you are unhappy. If you would get an epic weapon in return, you would be much more pleased. One problem that comes with that is that you do the same stuff and often run with your head into a wall because it's a better cost return than the easy option. This happens after hitting an adventure rank of 45, when the domains get tougher. However, it's not much of a problem till then. When you ignore all this and ignore effectiveness, which most players will not do, it can be fun. Because it is you who wants to see everything, who wants to do everything. But then again, how much should a player change his disposition so a game can be fun? Again, I think this calls for an example. If you want to extend your character till 90, you need 46 elemental specific materials from beating bosses, and those drop only 2 or 3 at a time. So taking the middle, which is 2.5, makes it about 18 times you have to beat that boss for one character to ascend. And that is only to break down a progression wall, not leveling that character up. Speaking of characters, you might notice that the character pool I'm using is very underwhelming. Okay, let's speak it out, it's bad. Most are bottom tier characters, but why is that? I use them even though I have others. This is because of the resources. If you get to adventure rank level 35 or higher, you will have already invested most of your resources. You have no more materials to level up your characters and you need to farm them. Chests are mostly depleted and that makes it more difficult. So if you are unlucky like me, you will not get a better character till this point. I got my second Electro character way too late, and at this point I have already invested heavily in Lisa, this girl here. She is bad, but the only one I had, and now I have to decide. Will I farm for weeks till I get another character to the same point, or resume with Lisa and need only small investments? So even though the game provides different characters with different abilities, the resource system incentivizes you to stick to one team and level it up as high as you can, and if you don't get better characters early, you are screwed. Let's look at the different progression paths to show this. Levels are simple. The characters get XP through tomes you find, and you get stat bonuses through leveling up. When you hit a progression wall, you need a certain adventure rank and the materials. Then you ascend, which means you can level up more. These progression walls are of course to first pad the game time, and second to make you buy stuff. Abilities can be upgraded in the same manner. You need materials and mora. Constellations are a bit tricky. In essence, it only works with the gacha system, with the exception of your main character. That's why I should explain this in that section. Weapon progression also works like this. Each weapon has an attack and a second attribute, and in addition to that a special trait. You can level up weapons like your character with materials and mora. If you have a second weapon that is the same as the first one, you can fuse those and upgrade that special trait. To level up weapons, you can either choose weapons or XP materials, which you can find and forge. Artifacts are common, and up till now the only equipment that is not integrated in the gacha system. You can find artifacts by investigating sites on exploration. These sites reset daily. Better artifacts are obtained by battling bosses and finishing domains. To level up an artifact, you need other artifacts, so making farm routes and getting more by investigation can be profitable. What you want to get is the perfect artifact, which means you need the perfect main stat, which is easy, and the perfect secondary stats on the right set, which is very hard. Artifacts, talent upgrade materials, and character upgrade materials can all be found in either domains or by killing bosses. Those cost resin, and I already covered that. Domains and bosses offer little challenges that can be quite tough in the higher levels, and if they were used rarely, they could also be fun. Sadly, because of the repeating nature of Genshin Impact, you have to fight them countless times, and I think even the most enjoyable fights become stale and boring after 100 battles fought. You can already see that from this progression system alone, Genshin Impact has a more complex system than Zelda Breath of the Wild. However, more complex does not mean better. It's like most things, subjective. I enjoy making my characters stronger and upgrading stuff, so for me it's way better, but for someone who enjoys battle and challenges and does not want to do anything with progression, it will be worse. During the game you will pick up a lot of items, and I want to incentivize it on the word pick up. When a chest pukes out 10 artifacts, you will press that X button X times. In the later story there are chests that give you items automatically, so I really don't agree on that design choice. Why not giving all items automatically? It's not about inventory limitations, because your limit is extremely high. You don't even tickle that limit. Inventory limitations have in most games no reason for existence. In survival games I can see the reason, but in RPGs it's usually not very well integrated. Online games have of course a technical reason, which is server limitations. But I don't see why a higher number should be a problem, but I'm not a programmer. Genshin luckily doesn't have this problem. But when you have in essence no limitations, you also don't need to choose which items you pick up, so they should change this. All players will pick up all items anyway, no need for the click orgy. They patched this and some rewards are instantly obtained, but for many others like loot, this problem still exists. There's one more thing, dailies. Daily missions are used to make player return to the game repeatedly. Those daily missions are in many games and are usually very monotone. Genshin tries to mix up some of those, but after a while those become a routine. Besides killing enemies, you have races, escort missions, giving X items to a person, and finally Ella Musk, the evil twin of Elon Musk. She tries to enslave the Hilichurls, so they have to work in her brother's Tesla factory. Let's go back to the story. We go with Kia to the leader of the Favonius Knights, Jean, and we also meet Lisa there. We have to deal with the Wind Temples to investigate Tualin, but only 3 of them and not 4 because I don't know actually. They bring it up very ominously, but never explain it. Did they forget?
Our objective is to deal with 3 of the 4 temples. I trust everyone understands why we are only dealing with 3.
Paimon doesn't.
Anyways, we go to the 3 temples. Those dungeons serve no other purpose than to introduce the rest of the jolly crew. You can even play those characters. They will be added to your character pool after this. I guess they needed to, or you could get unlucky and for example only get fire characters, and you would not be able to do most of the challenges. There's also a plot that the Fatui want to pressure Mondstadt to kill Dwalin. Fatuis are a military group of Snezhnaya, a different country. It doesn't make sense. They are openly hostile, do criminal acts, and at the end even invade and attack within the city walls. It feels like the devs only know politics from the hearsay. Remember the boy and the dragon? When the dragon left, he dropped a evil-looking teardrop, and it appears to be corrupted. They need some time to investigate, and you go out and meet that boy again, who is a bard and tells a story. I love those, and they are very well made. I will shut up and let the cutscene play for itself.
What is to be sung transpired in days of yore, when the divine archons still walked the earth. A dragon cast his curious gaze on the world below, as he parted from the heavens that gave his birth. The dragon sought truth amongst common folk, but mortal trifles only fogged his mind. The wind-born bard strummed his strings dolce, and the holy lyre answered his questions kind. The dragon was but a child, full of wonder, and soared the heavens free from care. The bard's songs invited him to sing along, for he yearned to let all perceive him fair. Enchanting legends the bard and dragon were, but the tides of despair soon engulfed the land. The lion fang perished, and the falcon flag slept, as a vile dragon approached Mondstadt in a lone stand. Over the cathedral loomed death and his friends. Of the people's agony, the bard soon sang. The soaring dragon heeded his grave calls, and amidst the windstorms a brutal war spread. Blood of venom sent the sky dragon into slumber, only to awake to be expelled in abhor. Why do people in this age loathe me so? But the holy lyre replied no more. Wrath and woe, vigor and venom, poured from the dragon's bitter eyes. The dragon's curse sprawled in silence, but the lyre could no longer soothe his cries.
After that, you speak with him and show him the teardrop, but it has been cleansed. They think it's the power of the main character that can borrow the power of the gods, which means he or she can change the used element, and now can clean the corruption of a legendary dragon. And still no one asks where you come from. They are like, this guy has superpowers for some reason and a flying creature, but no reason to ask questions. The bard is 20 and far from being 20 and tests that cleansing power with another teardrop. He tells us that Dwalin, or Storm Terror, was corrupted by the Abyss Order, which is the main nemesis. They plan to get the Holy Lyre, an instrument made by the god Barbados, to calm Dwalin. There it is revealed that Venti is in fact the god Barbados. What a twist. No one believes him, of course, so we steal the Holy Lyre. Right before we can steal it, an Abyss Mage teleports in, steals the Holy Lyre and teleports out. This is not only a convenience, but also a plot hole so deep you come out in China. Why did they only steal it right before you came to it? And if they can teleport anywhere, anytime, many things don't make sense. They could just kill people in their sleep, hide bombs, or kill all children. Their goal is to eradicate humans, so with an instant teleport ability, without limitations. That goal is not out of reach. The guards mistook you for the thief, and you have to flee from the cellar and hide in the tavern, because, I don't know again, they glide out of it and it would be easier to glide over the city walls. No one glides within the city, even though they have licenses for it. They sometimes even forget they can glide in the story. You hide in the tavern and the owner Dilak accepts you, but wants to know why. You tell him the story and he believes you. He gets Jean and together they help you. You think that the Fatui and the Abyss Order are working together. Turns out they do, and are there any political repercussions? Of course not. You get the Holy Lyre back and repair it with your mysterious superpower no one asks about. You try to summon Dwalin on a cliff and he appears, but the Abyss Mage tricks him.
Do not be fooled by him, dear dragon. He left you to rot alone.
Wait a minute, that sounds familiar.
Looking for this. Is that my voice? Is that my voice? Oh well.
Oh no, I can't unhear that. Stormterror gets deceived and it is revealed that your sibling is the sort of leader of the Abyss Order. So with the lyre broken, we need a plan B and we literally go up to Stormterror's lair and beat him up till he becomes good again. So Dwalin is good and everything is fine, right? No, it's important that the player has always a new enemy and a new objective. So in the midst of the town, a woman named Woman in Italian, who is part of the Fatui, attacks you and steals Ventus Gnosis. It's an object that gives him god powers. And then she just leaves. It's like Putin came to Washington, smug speed and then leaves, and the USA don't even complain to Russia. It's a non-issue. And with that, the first part ends. We move on to Liyue, but first let's talk about the combat. Genshin Impact uses real-time combat. It consists of 3 elements: offense, defense and healing. For offense, you hit with your weapon, make a charged attack, or you can use skills or specials. Genshin has different elements that mostly contribute to the offense, with Earth Element as an exception. Not only have enemies immunities and weaknesses against elements, but there are also effects when elements meet each other. A burning enemy who takes damage over time will get huge amounts of damage if hit by Electro. Electro, which drains energy by itself, will do damage over time if it hits water element. Water that increases cooldown will freeze if it gets hit by an ice attack. And ice that drains stamina will do extra damage when hit by fire. Ice and electro do AoE damage and reduces physical resistance. Earth in combination with any element besides wind will leave a crystal behind that grants a barrier, and wind amplifies everything besides earth and spreads the effect. That sounds like a lot of variety, right? No, not really. In game you just hit an enemy with the element the enemy doesn't have, because if all elements have a reaction with another element, it doesn't really matter with what you hit it. The exception might be a barrier and frozen, because they can be used as a defense. Speaking of defense, you have 4 different types, or at least this is how I saw it, to prevent or reduce incoming damage. First of all, not standing where the damage goes off. Secondly, evading by using a dash. This also grants a few iframes, and for those who don't know, this is a very brief moment where you are invincible. Some characters have abilities that can block, or you can use the barrier with the earth element. And lastly, while a bit tricky, using your special move. It makes you invincible whenever a small cutscene plays, and you can use that. Healing works in 2 ways, through the abilities of characters or weapons, or by pausing the game, going to your inventory and eating. You can't eat endlessly, which makes it less broken than Breath of the Wild. You need different approaches for different enemies. The shield Helishots, for example, needs to be attacked from behind, or the shield has to be burned down first. Bosses have different abilities and hyper armor, or are outright invincible between phases. Bosses have also the biggest problem, which is communication, because some abilities can be dodged while others can't. Let's look at these aggressive oversized flowers. When the fire boss starts bursting out flames, you can dodge them, and even if you are inside the damage area while dodging, you receive no damage. I will slow this down. As you can see, I'm within the radius as I'm dashing and I take no damage. This is called iframes. The Ice Regiswein, that's the name of the boss, has a similar attack that does not allow iframes, or those are inconsistent. Again, slowing down on these ones, you can see, like with the Fire Regiswein, I dash and I still take damage. It could be there is a rule whenever damage that has a longer build up, iframes don't exist for these attacks. But this is not communicated in any way. Rules should be consistent, or they lose the rule status and become just vague. If you have iframes while dashing, you need to have them in all cases. For very special moves or enemies, you can make an exception, but the rest needs to be consistent. Some bosses have abilities that can be dodged, and you can finish bosses without taking damage, but for some bosses like the Ice Wolf or Storm Terror, it's impossible. Storm Terror makes platforms. You can stand on these like the popular kids game The Floor is Lava, and the Ice Wolf spawns endlessly tiny jumping wolves at you. For a good example, let's take the hypostasis. Those cubes have well telegraphed attacks that all can be dodged or evaded, which in my book is not the same as dodging using iframes. Evading just means not standing where the attack goes off. However, they still have a gotcha moment. Best way to show this is with the Anemo hypostasis. It flies to you and makes a circle and a strong wind inwards. You can't escape if you are too far into the center. Then it explodes and does massive damage. This attack is easily dodged, as the boss only flies right onto you for just 2 different attacks, and it will be easy to dodge it. However, the first time you will be hit by it, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. You can't prevent it if you don't know what the attack does, but it's not that big of a deal. You don't have 1 character, you have 4. So even if it one hits you, it would need to do that 4 times. This is not Dark Souls. I need to say this to remind myself, because as I view Dark Souls type of combat the best for action-based games, I constantly compare a new game's combat to it, and I will do the same now. The game is not about survival, it's about damage. Getting hit by attacks you cannot evade or a gotcha moment is fine. I have some argument to support that. First, it's pretty hard to be killed in this game. You need all your characters to be defeated while you still heal and revive them. Secondly, the healing system isn't made for tough combat, where it's a risk to heal like with the Estus. Third, this game doesn't punish you like Dark Souls for dying. And for the last, a little mind experiment. Let's assume you do minimal damage and you receive no damage at all. You could beat almost all of Dark Souls content with that, but you would not be able to do that in Genshin Impact because it is time challenged in a lot of ways and in a lot of opportunities. Genshin is more about dealing damage while surviving. It's not solely about damage, and you should not prepare just for that, but most of the time maximizing your damage output is the key to most of the timed combat challenges. While some bosses are immune till you trigger their vulnerable state, dealing large amounts of damage in that state is important. This pretty much sums up the combat, but let's talk about my favorite tactics. In my current team, I switched out Lisa because I got Razor. Razor deals an incredible amount of damage if used in combination with other elements. Razor is electric, so I do his elemental attack, then switch back to Barbara, who is a spellcaster, so she always inflicts elemental damage. Then I attack a few times, triggering water and electric, then I switch back, till I get Razor's special, which lets him do electric damage with each attack. Then I use Xiangling's ultimate, or her bear, which will deal fire damage while I'm attacking, which results in continuous elemental damage. This is just one tactic and one combination. You will probably have a different setup and a different tactic. As I said before, what brings this all down is that you have to stick to one of such setup because of the limited resources you acquire. Constantly changing party members and with them your use tactic will either take very long or be expensive. It's still fun for a while regardless. With that, back to Liyue. The Anemo god wasn't really a help in finding your sibling, so we search for Rex Lapis, the Geo god. He also is the god of trade and contracts, in which both he seems to have no knowledge of, but we will come to that. Rex Lapis is involved in the local politics and gives each year directions for the people of Liyue. We coincidentally came just at the right time, as the dissension is about to happen. All 30 or so citizens gather at the Tiananmen Square, while I have a glitch adventure and scare the guard when emerging from below the crowd. Then Rex Lapis descends. Fast, more like falling.
Whoa, look at all the people!
Rex Lapis has been killed. Seal the exits.
And this is where most people will think that there's no way that this is the case. The ruse doesn't work because of meta experience. The Anemo God is a playable character, so the Geo God will be one too. In fact, I think every god will become a playable character that you can meet in person, so this surprise doesn't work, and anyone who played games before will catch on to that. But this is something that comes from experience outside of the game, so I can't give the game shit for that. Where I can give the game shit is what comes after.
They're here! Arrest them!
So what's the plan here? Arresting someone with the power to kill a god? A god so powerful he made forests out of stone pillars? We tried to escape, but got cornered.
There's nowhere to run!
What do you mean? We have a glider. Why don't we just fly away? Gliders are canon and not just gameplay mechanics. There are story quests with cutscenes that deals with gliders. Why does the game have to contradict its own world building for the story to happen? And the solution would have been so simple. Just make everything happen at ground level. That's it. The teleportation you can write off as a game mechanic that's not in the story, but the glider is part of the story. Okay, enough ranting, let's see where this goes. We get saved by Child. He is part of the Fatui, the Snezhnaya hardliners that attack other people in different countries, but it's okay because he is in a kind of different department? Yeah, that's an excuse. Child explains that in order to clear ourselves of suspicion, we need to see the Adepti, which are something like demigods who helped Rex Lapis founding the city. They live on 3 different mountains. Their names are Mooncarver, Mountain Shaper and Cloud Retainer. And we have to bring all 3 starter Pokemon together and tell them that Rex Lapis is dead. Then we also have to find the Yaksha, who looks human, so you can bet that he's a playable character. In fact, every character till now that has at least some kind of style or uniqueness is playable, or in case of the enemies, will probably become playable, like Senora. You can bet on that. All of them have a little test attached to them, like a battle, finding something and so on, but nothing notable. We need to find the Geogod's body, but the government, who is called Shising, hides it. Child found someone who can get us to the body, so we meet Zhongli. He's part of a funeral service that organizes burials, so he can take us to the body of Rex Lapis.
Indeed. It is as you have guessed. The Wangsheng Funeral Parlor organizes burials. We ensure that those who pass on...
He also welcomes us to the Cloud District, tries to take over Japan as Prime Minister, and wants to become a vampire god. It's pretty funny how much a voice actor can change how the player views a character. He's also Rex Lapis. It's pretty clear if you already assume that some character is Rex Lapis in disguise. And he knows nothing about the world, but old traditions on the other hand very well. And as I mentioned, he knows nothing about everyday trade. They try to explain it that he only knows how trade in a bigger picture works, but it is the same as saying a god of mathematics doesn't know how simple additions work. We do various tasks for him which are extremely boring and inflated. As I go through my footage, I can see the problem I have with those interruptions. These interactions are for world building. They give you informations about legends, tales and the world. It's like an encyclopedia, and sometimes it's fun finding more about the world, but the main quest forces you to read entire pages of background information while you want to interact with the story. It forces you, and that is the problem, not the lore in general. This could also be a problem with me, so I want to give an off-topic example. When you search for informations on the internet, let's say, what is the max level in game X? So you find a website, and instead of saying what the max level is, it goes on and on, like when the game was released and which problem it had, who worked on it, and so on. It's not like it was a general info site. The topic was max level of game X. They just blurt out all of these informations at the start. Genshin does the same. Instead of story, I get tons of lore in the way to sidetrack me. It's like the old saying goes, there is a time and place for everything. After the whole ordeal, there is a nice cutscene, like the Bard's song from Mondstadt, and here I have to contradict myself right away because I like those pieces of lore, so maybe it's about the quality.
They say that when Lady Ningguang ponders important affairs, she retreats to her jade chamber with none but her 3 closest confidants in tow. Why brings she these trusted 3 to sift through sources, dig through documents, looking for information? Piece by piece, facts and figures paint a picture on the walls of the chamber. But well before the wall is filled, Lady Ningguang's mind is made up. Having made her call, she has every last document shredded, and whoosh, she scatters the shavings out her window. Ah, look at them, how they billow in the wind like a sudden swirling blizzard. As the fragments fall, traces of text flicker before the eyes of the merchants of Liyue, like ink stains in white snow. The saying goes, the rarest treasures in the land are the words brought by the paper snow. For the words of the Tianquan have the power to move mountains, and all throughout the land know it.
We get invited to the Jade Chamber, so we need to get greeting gifts, and then we visit the Jade Chamber, and because you don't find any chests or point of interest on it, you can assume that it will be inaccessible later. It seems they have hidden the corpse of Rex Lapis because of what happened in Mondstadt. That means they know that the Fatui attacked within the city walls of Mondstadt, yet they still allow them in Liyue. This is a problem many stories have, when character decisions have no real connection to their knowledge or their personality. They should ban the Fatui out of the city and actively hunt them down after everything what happened. It's like having a terrorist group in a clubhouse inside your city, and that's fine for them. But the story requires nonsense behavior, so we also have to put up with it. When we come back, we are told that the Millelith, the military so to speak, of the Shising, are meeting with the Adepti you called ages ago. We, in the meantime, search for Child, who found the body of Rex Lapis in the treasure chamber.
Wow! This is the Golden House? It looked impressive enough from the outside, but who would have guessed that it was even fancier on the inside?
Fighting talk, I love it! Now let's see you live up to it.
We fight him, and he's one of the hardest bosses in the game. Maybe the hardest boss. He has 3 phases, in which he uses water, then electro, then both.
Look! Child's back to normal again!
After his defeat, he switches to Plan B, because the Gnosis is not in the corpse. Plan B is reviving an ancient god to destroy the city.
Let's see. Will the nation that has lost its deity be swallowed up by an ancient malice once more? If you wish to drown together with the people of Liyue, you're free to stay and enjoy the show.
Huh? He's already gone. That guy is fast. What's going on?
That escalated quickly, so we meet the Adepti and Ningguang on the Jade Chamber, and together we fight the god, and the Fatui who want to destroy the city. I wonder if that will have consequences. The god looks pretty cool, but you just fight wave after wave of enemies, and lastly we drive the Jade Chamber into the god.
What do you mean, Lady Ningguang? I'll sacrifice the Jade Chamber. What is the meaning of this?
I understand.
Traveler, lend me a hand. Farewell, old friend. Goodbye for now. Let us meet again in the future.
We meet at the harbor. There, Ningguang and the Adepti are not on the same page over how to run Liyue, but in the end, the Adepti make place for a new generation. Zhongli is not present, so we search for him, and he is with Signora and Child. Here is it revealed that everyone with an intellect of a melons are coming. Zhongli is Rex Lapis. He made a contract to hand over his Gnosis for the help of the Fatui, and the reason is...
Gathering all the forces that had been bubbling behind the scenes, and then stirring them together in a pot that was bound to boil over. That's what he wanted to see, am I right?
And the powerful god of Geo, contracts, and trades could not have done that? Really? He needed the help of two shady characters for that. We say our goodbyes and go to the fake funeral because we prepared so much that it would be a waste not to go. And this concludes the second act. I will not cover Dragonspine or Inazuma because this is a good cut and then I can wait till there is enough content to make another video about it. The story is very disappointing. For once, killing a god is weep shit 1.0. There is this incredible world and the story does nothing with it. It's just a place where the story happens. There should be more geopolitical confrontations, borders. There could have been minor war zones. The story is not awful, it has twists, but nothing surprising, and maybe it's a bit cynical, but most stories aren't surprising. In fact, most stories are much about the same. There's just a difference in plot twists. But for a plot twist, you need character depth. There is no plot twist if the character B. Treya, the Filer of Truth, betrays you later, and for stupid reasons like he wanted money. What makes the difference is character design, world building, and the story, and how these three factors interact. In Genshin, they just don't. The story happens at the characters. They could have had the polar opposite personalities, and it would just be the same. The story could also happen anywhere, and with anyone. The characters are so damn bland. The librarian has books as a hobby. Wow. The singing nurse likes singing. The Grandmaster of Favonius wants to be a good Grandmaster. The character with the most depth is Child. He does prioritize orders, but is friendly when possible. He has a disposition for other characters, which, by the way, no other character has besides Paimon. No character thinks about other characters. They just exist in parallel universes. Characters are a driving force behind a story. A story can't happen despite the character. Our main character could not be evil and like murder, or for a less drastic example, he wants to prioritize finding her brother. Fuck off, dragon, that has nothing to do with me from my perspective, I'm off to the next city. Our character has to be bland or the story does not work. But because of that, the story is also bland. The best stories are where characters have a reason and motivation to do something, and the results of that story shape the characters, and that makes a cycle. A story happens because people with certain personalities come to a certain situation, and that's the world building part. If the story just happens without any consideration for character premise or development, then you can hardly find a reason why you should immerse yourself in the story, and you get stupid contradictions like Zhongli, who can't solve his own problems with god powers and political control over a large city. The God of Contracts has a side story, where he meets a woman and a man, who both want a treasure.
Before entering the ruin, I have a proposal that will help us prevent the kind of senseless arguing between you two that we saw at Guyonstone Forest.
Okay. What is it?
I propose you two agree upon a contract, stipulating that we alternate who gets claim to each treasure we encounter, with only one object permitted per claim. To show my sincerity, I won't be taking any treasure. This will just be between you all.
And the man who was easily identifiable as an evil man breaks the contract later, but Zhongli thinks the woman is still bound by this contract. This is not how contracts work. My god, let's trash that scenario and make something different. How about a region, let's call it Konghong, and Liwi, who by the way is inspired by China, has recently acquired it by a contract for large independencies, and right now breaks the contract one-sidedly. Okay, that's my take on the story, and the major flaws in it. For the next part, let's look at Genshin's business model, the Gacha system. The Gacha system comes from Japan and means a specific way in getting customers to become paying customers. It's basically a progression and positive feedback loop. You get a loot box with useful items, and even the items you don't need can be used to make other items stronger or give points for the next loot box. In Genshin this is called wishes. There are a lot of parallels to gambling, loud music, and a myriad of effects. It reminds me of those slot machines in different food services from my childhood. Everything is made so it looks like you just saved the world by opening a loot box. What's pretty interesting and discouraging at the same time is the math behind those. You get 3 to 5 star items from loot boxes. The best items and characters are 5 stars. So you want those, they are the goal. The chance to get a 5-star weapon or character is 0.3% and in some events 0.7%. Given by normal probability, you get 1 5-star in 333 attempts or 143 attempts. This is reduced because if you get 90 wishes and not 1 5-star in it, you will get 1 5-star with your last attempt. Because of that, we can say that you get 1 5-star for 90 wishes. The highest resource demanding challenge is the Abyss, where you need 2 full teams, so 8 characters and 8 weapons. Each character has to be thrown 8 times for full potential, and each weapon 5 times. Each wish is 160 Primogems, so you need 8 times 90 wishes, which is 720 wishes, or 115,200 Primogems. The best cost Primogem ratio are the monthly Moon Blessing, which gives 2,700 Primogems, plus 300 Genesis crystals, which are used for the in-game shop, like microtransactions, but they are equal to Primogems, which means you get each month 3,000 Primogems, so 115,200 Primogems divided by 3,000 will be 38 blessings. That's, given the price in my country, which makes 5.5 euro, makes 211 euro, and 38 months times 8 makes 1,689 euro and 16 years for the full team. Now for the weapons. We use the same formula but reduce it to a factor of 5 instead of 8, which means 132 for one weapon, and 1,056 euro for 8 weapons. So for more than 20 years and about 3,000 euro you can get your full team, right? No. This was calculated heavily in favor of the player because there are more than 8 5-stars, and what you get is random, so you can also draw characters where you already have 8. Maybe someone in the comments can calculate the chance of getting 8 times 8 the same character in a large pool of characters where you can also redraw every character. This is insane, but just the tip of the iceberg. Let's assume you don't want to wait 20 years. You can also buy Genesis crystals directly. You pay 110 euros for 6,480 crystals, which makes 115,200 Primogems from the character cost, plus 72,000 Primogems from the weapons equals 187,200 Primogems, divided by 6,480. Equals roughly 29. times 110 euro makes 3,177 euro. For one fully equipped character, times 8 makes 25,422 euro. Yes, you could also buy a middle class car for that. Again, heavily in favor of the player. Just insane. Doing the math discourages me to even buy something. It's like using a water pistol to extinguish a burning shopping mall. Okay, that's for the numbers. I heard a lot about how this should be forbidden, and I'm against that. First of all, it is each person's own responsibility how he or she spends money. Using restrictions on everything where a person needs to think or self-reflect a little incapacitates the user and encourages not learning. I think like Immanuel Kant, each person should strive to become an enlightened, responsible individuum. We aren't cheap. Genshin is just one game, and if you control it, the next game will come with the next scheme. But educating a population to confront media with an intelligent mindset will help against most scams. Children are of course not included, but we could use Genshin as a learning tool. How about we limit how much children can spend their money on? Let's say $10 for each year past 10. So if you are 12, you can spend $20 online, and each time you get an email where it says, "So far you have spent X bucks on Genshin Impact." With that money you could have also bought a baseball, a PlayStation or a bicycle, and so on the more he or she spends. This would first be a safety line for children as they can't spend more money on something, and a reflection so they can learn from their money spending behavior. We could also do that for adults, but with no limit, just a constant reminder how much you have already spent on the game and what you could have spent it alternatively. There's also a battle pass, who combines in-game items and money, which you can play and pay for. If you pay, your battle pass is roughly triple times its worth. Like dailies, it encourages coming back to the game and spending money on it. And at the same time it forces you. Because you want to be as efficient as possible, you don't want to miss out on a weekly bonus. Which includes killing a boss 15 times. It's any boss, but still 15 each week. You can almost not do these weekly, is that the right term? If you miss out 1 or 2 days. This is the part where the business model dictates gameplay. You probably heard of the mantra "gameplay is king", which means that gameplay comes before everything. Well, here the gacha system usurped gameplay and made it his slave, doing Sisyphus work for all eternity, while the gacha system provides opium for the people. When you start making routes to do your dailies faster, when fighting 15 bosses a week, open 20 ley lines, which are so fundamental boring that I forgot them till now, and many more mania tasks each week, you can feel how everything was shaped around the gacha system. Like create Artuin as the gacha system and building everything on its shell, 4 elephants and a Discworld that may be interesting but can't escape the fundament it was built on. This is of course the negative part. For a more positive outlook, Genshin Impact is free and will have future updates and events. At some point it may become even bigger than Breath of the Wild. The gacha system represents the hateful business part of the game and how shamelessly it tries to get players to buy things. With the gacha system I feel more than in any other game how the business part reduces the art. And yes, video games are considered art in many European countries, and by many major scientists. While in the USA this is not universally accepted, in Europa there is a much bigger census. Europa always was famous for its art, and I think the expertise is more on the European side. There's always this big argument that video games are made for money, which is pretty funny as most artists like Mozart, Van Gogh, Rubens, Platon, Strauss, Vivaldi and many more sold their art, or their philosophies. Art always had this part where the artist wanted to make a living with it. Art itself was historically also a product. While there were artists that could live without their talent, this was not the rule, more the exception. So let's come to a conclusion. Genshin has many problems, outside of monetary issues. Besides the one I already mentioned while going through it, it's way too inflated. Inside this giant 300-hour plus balloon hides a pretty good 30-hour game that got imploded by repetition. Each enemy they include in a future update will be milked endlessly, until it becomes boring. The co-op is just there. It's like making a single player game and just include a second player. It is helpful inside domains, but on the overworld it's just boring, as there's nothing that incorporates co-op, like tougher enemies, special puzzles, or co-op quests. Paimon and I have a difficult relationship. First I liked her, then I disliked her, then I hated her, and now I'm just indifferent. I understood what I didn't like about Paimon. She is the game's outlet for calling the player stupid. She restricts your movements, constantly repeats informations, and holds monologues because the main character is mainly silent. For people who played Persona 5, she is Genshin's version of Morgana. It's pretty smart. Instead of having a system message that annoys you, they make a character, so you hate the character instead of the system. Genshin has an overall good combat. It's annoying if you want to evade and suddenly you start climbing because you were too close to a wall. The elements provide a pretty good enemy variation, even though it's essentially the same enemy in different color. Exploration is the most fun part in the game. I think it's on par with Zelda Breath of the Wild. The little puzzles you find are not that big of a challenge, but a welcome distraction. The events are mixed for me. There were some really good ones and some really bad ones. I hope they improve on that part. They even had a new region for just one event, which was insane. The voice acting was really good, which really surprised me. World building was excellent, while the story was very foreseeable and not original, and definitely not deep. To get a second opinion, I talked with Joseph Anderson about it. He's a YouTuber and I will include a link to his channel in the description. He agreed that the story is inflated with needless dialogue and also that it's way too resource heavy to level up another character to a playable level. This is a big gameplay contradiction. The large character pool invites you to swap and test many different teams. There's even an option to set up 4 teams, but the resources and gacha system restricts you. This was, without doubt, be done to push players to invest money, which I never did in my time with Genshin. To be fair, they didn't have PayPal up till recently and I don't use credit cards. And at the very last, another strange bug. I don't know, maybe just weird game design. Genshin lets you pause at any time, which is good, it's single player after all, except it does not pause timers. Here 2 examples. The Oceanus is a water boss and summons constantly little enemies. When you don't kill one enemy within a specific time frame, I think it's about 4 minutes, it summons a water surge which kills most characters instantly. So when you pause and return after a while, that happens instantly. And the aforementioned Regiswein has a weak point you attack, till it becomes more vulnerable, and the shaft goes limp, so you attack it and then it gets stiff again. But if you pause the game right after downing it, it will go up instantly after you resume. This also happens with the bounties. But I will not show footage because bounties suck. I like and hate Genshin. Thank you for watching and farewell.